In 1976, Reno, Nevada, was a city of glittering neon and quiet college campuses. But the lights went out for one family on a spring night that April. The victim was 19-year-old Michelle Mitchell, a vibrant student at the University of Nevada. She didn't disappear, she was taken. Abducted from a residential street near her home, vanishing into the sudden, terrifying silence. When her body was discovered days later in a shallow grave east of the city, the community didn't just feel grief, they felt terror. This was a brutal, personal crime, the kind that whispers of a predator in their midst. The investigation was massive, frantic, and ultimately cold. Detectives were under crushing pressure. The crime scene held only frustrating fragments. Some fibers, trace biological material, and a horrifying absence of witnesses. The killer was efficient or perhaps just lucky. The case officially stalled, relegated to the cold case unit, a file gathering dust, waiting for a break that wouldn't come for decades. But the pressure never truly dissipated. And that desperation, that need for closure, would eventually open the door to a profound and unthinkable injustice. 3 years after Michelle Mitchell's murder, the break in the case didn't come from Reno, but from thousands of miles away, in a psychiatric hospital in Louisiana. And it came not from a suspect, but from a victim of her own mind. Cathy Woods was 28 years old. She was not a criminal. She was profoundly ill, struggling with severe, untreated schizophrenia. Her reality was fractured. Her life was a tragic drift between institutions. Yet, in a moment of extreme vulnerability, during a distressed conversation with facility staff, Woods began muttering vague, confused statements about a woman being hurt in Reno, Nevada. These were the fragmented whispers of a broken mind, symptoms of her illness. They contained no non-public details of the Mitchell murder. They were not a confession. But when facility staff relayed these distressed comments to the Washoe County Sheriff's Office in Reno, police saw not a mentally ill woman needing help, but a lifeline, a chance to finally close the file. The critical red flag, a diagnosis of severe schizophrenia, was dismissed. The pursuit of the truth was instantly replaced by the urgency of an arrest. The legal system, desperate for a solution, chose to believe a voice that was clearly disconnected from reality. Reno detectives immediately flew to Louisiana. What followed was a classic, devastating example of a coerced and contaminated confession. Cathy Woods was brought from the relative sanctuary of the asylum and placed under intense, prolonged pressure. The records of that interview are chilling. Woods provided no coherent timeline. She couldn't name the victim. She couldn't describe the murder weapon. Every detail she confessed was, in fact, planted by the interrogators. When she failed to provide a specific piece of information, the detectives, the authority figures she desperately sought to appease, would suggest it. Woods, in her confused, suggestible state, would simply repeat the planted detail back. This wasn't an admission of guilt. It was a script written by law enforcement and recited by a sick woman. There was zero corroboration. There was no physical evidence tying her to the crime. No witnesses placed her in Nevada in 1976. Yet, this fragile, psychologically manipulated narrative, the confession of a ghost, became the single monolithic piece of evidence used to secure a murder charge. Woods, who needed a doctor, was instead transported back to Nevada to face a life sentence. The subsequent legal battles cemented the injustice. The first trial, 1980, the defense failed to effectively use Woods' mental illness as a shield, unable to fully convey the depth of her suggestibility. The prosecution successfully framed the confession as a moment of troubled truth. The jury, still haunted by the crime, convicted her. Cathy Woods was sentenced to life. But justice caught a fleeting glimpse of the truth. The conviction was later overturned, not because she was innocent, but because of procedural errors related to the admissibility of certain statements. The system admitted to tripping up, but refused to admit it had the wrong person. Nevada immediately prepared for round 2. The second trial, 1985, the prosecution came back harder, meticulously covering their constitutional basis. They doubled down on the culpable memory concept, arguing that the illness did not negate the truth of the confession. they painted Woods' confusion as evasion. The defense again presented their case, pointing out the complete lack of physical evidence, the geographical impossibility, and the clear manipulation, but the weight of the confession was simply too heavy to lift. Woods was convicted a second time. 2 juries, 2 convictions. A life sentence confirmed. The judicial machine had prioritized closure over justice, sealing Cathy Woods' fate within the concrete isolation of the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. 35 years. A lifetime. Woods navigated the prison world, a place designed for the violent and the guilty, while her own complex mental health went largely untreated. She became an inmate, a number, a forgotten statistic from a long-ago cold case. All the while the real killer was free. Rodney Halbauer was a known violent serial offender, already linked to the notorious Gypsy Hill murders in California during that same era. Halbauer operated in the Reno-Tahoe region, his MO matched the brutality of the Mitchell case, and his criminal profile was a glaring red flag. But because the Mitchell case was officially closed by Cathy Woods' confession, no one connected Halbauer to the Reno murder. The system's mistake had not only condemned an innocent woman, but it had granted a dangerous predator years of freedom regarding a capital crime. Halbauer was eventually apprehended and jailed for other crimes, but the Mitchell file remained cemented shut by Woods' false conviction. The breakthrough came not from detective work, but from forensic science. By the early 2010s, new DNA testing capabilities allowed investigators to extract and analyze minute-degraded biological samples saved from the 1976 crime scene. The evidence, the quiet, irrefutable voice of science, was sent to the FBI's CODIS database. The results landed like a thunderclap. The DNA did not match Cathy Woods. It generated a direct, undeniable hit to Rodney Halbauer, the man already serving time for other violent attacks. In 2015, after 35 years, the impossible became true. The conviction, built on suggestion and illness, crumbled under the weight of one single definitive DNA profile. The state of Nevada moved to vacate the conviction. Cathy Woods, at 66 years old, frail, confused, and overwhelmed, walked out of prison. She had missed the internet revolution, decades of medical care, and the simple, priceless commodity of a normal life. 35 years were gone. The cost of this failure was immeasurable. Cathy Woods, released into a world she no longer understood, faced a profoundly difficult future. In 2017, her legal team secured a historic civil rights settlement from Washoe County, exceeding $3 million. It was a staggering financial compensation and a public, concrete admission of guilt by the county investigators who had coerced her confession. But money cannot buy back time. It cannot heal the trauma of a life stolen. In 2018, Rodney Halbauer was finally convicted of Michelle Mitchell's murder years after the crime. The true killer was held accountable only because DNA technology saved the innocent woman they had wrongly locked away. The story of Cathy Woods is a warning, a desperate shout from the shadows. It is proof that when police and prosecutors prioritize closure over truth, when they mistake mental illness for malice, and when they exploit the most vulnerable among us, the entire structure of justice is compromised. Cathy Woods never got her life back. But after 35 years in the darkness, she finally held the truth. And sometimes that is the only light left. The score swells and then fades to a prolonged silence.